Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you our CFL Week 4 preview between the Edmonton Eskimos and the BC Lions. So let's take a look at some keys to victory for both teams, starting with Edmonton.
So far this season, defensively, the Eskimos have been playing some pretty good football. One thing that's evident when you watch them on film, the speed and athleticism at the linebacker position with TJ Hill, JC Sherritt. Those guys have been playing some great football, and they don't beat themselves with mental mistakes. They are always where they're supposed to be, and they're constantly making plays. They did a great job last week versus BC. They just need the offense to step up and bring something to the table. Now, when you look at the offensive side of football, and quite honestly, they have played some solid football. They're just inconsistent. Mike Riley has to do a better job of looking off his targets. Right now, he's bird dogging his wide receivers, which means he's finding guys, locking on them, and trying to fit a football in there that results in tip passes. It also results in interceptions. If they can find some type of consistency from that passing game, we know they can move the football. They were able to move the football last week despite the conditions versus BC. Now let's move over to the Lions in this ball game, and I have to start on the offensive line. You look at Jovan Olafoye and what he did last week. He had problems versus TJ Hill. He had problems versus Odell Willis. And I know Willis is one of the top pass rushers in the CFL, but you have to do a better job moving your feet and getting your hands on him right away. Otherwise, it could be the same story this week that it was last. And the same story can be said for the wide receivers. They have to raise their level of play. They struggle getting separation. They struggle showing their face to Lule, and that's what caused him to take off more often than not. These guys have to find a way to get open. Otherwise, it could be a long day for that offense. Now, on the defensive side of the football, I like what I saw last week from Dante Marsh and Cord Parker. Those guys are the cornerbacks. They play on the outside. And they did a fine job versus the outstanding receivers of the Edmonton Eskimos. They're going to need an encore performance, especially since they're playing indoors, controlled conditions, no torrential downpour like it was last week in Edmonton. They're going to have to step up. Was last week the mirage, or was it what we actually expect to see from these guys week in, week out? The X factor for the Eskimos will have to be the defensive line playing better contained. Although Willis was having his way with Olafoye last week, down in, down out, he got out of position. A lot of times he twisted in, and that opened up the door for Lule to make plays with his legs, and he took full advantage. So they're going to have to play with better contained this week versus the BC Lions. And when you look at BC's X factor, in my opinion, it's going to have to be the halfbacks, not the corners, the halfbacks. So when you look at guys like Bell and Phillips, and those guys will have to protect the deep middle of the football field, because we know that's what Fred Sampson will eat all day if he's given the opportunity. I like BC in this ball game, playing under the lights, indoors. Like I mentioned before, no torrential downpour. All things equal, BC is the better team, and I think they'll win this one at home. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Eskimo fan forums and Lion fan forums for always showing football game plan support.